Hey, this is Alex with the Unbiased Trailblazer podcast. If you haven't joined our Discord yet, you're missing out. Go to our Twitter at Unbiased Blazers. There's a link in our bio where you can join the Discord server from there. There's also links in every podcast description, so you can join from there as well. Now, let's get to the show. Rip City, baby.
When I play out a game and then talk, I'm trying, Jennifer.
Rip City, what's going on? Alex here with the Unbiased Trailblazer podcast. We got a special guest tonight, but first let me introduce Fawad. How are you doing tonight, Fawad?
I'm good as always. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we this has been a little time in the making. We've been waiting to do this. So without further ado, let's introduce our special guest here. We got KJ. Some of you may know him from Twitter. I know his Twitter handle has changed. At once it was Die Happy. I think it's Die Mad, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I'm Die Mad the second now on Twitter.
So if you've seen him on Twitter Spaces, if you've seen him on Twitter, that's where you know him. He's in our Discord servers, both on the Trailcasters and on us. So thank you for joining us very much.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. Fawad and I did the Trailcasters about a month ago, and
That's right.
last year I got to do the We Like the Blazers with Ryan Whitledge. So I'm completing the Triforce of Blazers fan podcasts.
Here we go.
I'm happy to be here.
Well, we appreciate you being here. I know it's kind of short notice. I think we kind of planned on this last week, so I'm glad we found time to do it. And let's hop into it. First things first. I know between you and I, we have a little bit of a conflicting opinion on this roster. So I would like to get your opinion on this roster and just kind of your thoughts on how this offseason went.
Yeah, we have been exchanging messages back and forth over the summer, and honestly, man, I'm just amazed by your optimism. I'm not a big fan of what Joe Cronin's done. I think that the team is decisively worse than it was this time last year, and I'm really concerned about the upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I feel like there was a lot of moves that were made in this offseason that addressed the issues that we had. So let me ask you this: what were the issues you saw last year that we had? What kind of issues did you think we had back last year?
So the cardinal sin of the Blazers and Damian Lillard's career has been backcourt defense for the last, say, 7 years since we've lost Wesley Matthews. We've had Dame, we've had CJ, and we haven't really had somebody to go out there and guard the best opposing guard. Like that has been our Achilles heel. You saw it in the Western Conference Finals against the Warriors. You see it on a random Tuesday when when a guard will put up a season high against us. You saw it against the Nuggets in the playoffs now 2 seasons ago when we got schooled by Facundo Campazzo. Like that really,
And Austin
I
Rivers.
think, and Austin Rivers. Thank you. Yes, that really I think is the team's Achilles heel, and that's what I wanted to see addressed this offseason.
So I actually agree 100% with you. I think that was our biggest issue, that and not having a true power forward that could play defense and stretch the floor. But I agree. Number one issue with me was the guard defensive play. So I'm glad that we agree on that because I'm right there with you. And I know Fawad and I have kind of talked about it in the past. Fawad, for a refresher, did you have any other different issue besides that last year?
I feel like last year a lot of things were wrong. Obviously, defense was one of them, but I mean, defense was a lot of them because it's not just one thing. Like you said, backcourt defense, but also, wing defense was almost non-existent last year or whatever, like last healthy year. And our bench bigs, Cantor and Melo, they couldn't play defense for their lives. So those were all issues. And then health was another one too. But that's part of being a Blazers fan.
Yeah, right. You're not a Blazer fan if you're not dealing with injuries. So, KJ, let me ask you this. You said that you feel like we didn't really address it, correct? The
Correct.
guard defensive issues.
Correct.
So, were you of the opinion that we probably should have traded Simons away this year for something?
To me, Simons is the new CJ. He's an excellent player. I think he's very good. I've been on the, or I was, I should say, I can say was now. I was on the trade CJ bandwagon for quite a long time. But it's not because I didn't like CJ. It's not because I didn't think he was a good player. He's a fantastic player, and we've seen that in New Orleans. But the thing is, we already have an undersized defensive liability at point guard who's really good on offense. We have that guy in Damian Lillard. And so what we need to pair next to Dame is something else, something other than that. That was the problem with the Dame and CJ pairing. That's why those teams never went anywhere. And if Simons is the starter next year, which I think everyone expects him to be, I see us as exactly where we left off in terms of the starting unit.
This is
So,
why
go for it. Go for it, Fawad.
This is why I was excited to have you on because you're relatively pessimistic to the rest of the fan base, and I agree with a lot of your takes, just not as strongly. And when I'm with Alex, I kind of get pulled over to the more optimistic side, so now I have someone to balance me out. And I agree with almost all your takes. I think Simons is going to be, um, Damon CJ 2.0, but I think there is a little bit of potential for him to improve, and like I wanted to trade him too for any defender, whether it was a 2 or a 3, and either keep Norm or maybe trade him too. But before continuing on Simons, what did you think about Gary Payton too? Do you think he can help cover for both Damon Simons, or what do you think he's not enough, or what?
And so if your biggest detriment is backcourt defense, going out and adding what may be like the best backcourt defender into the league, sounds like it's going to be a great solution. But unless you think that Peyton is going to start and Simons is going to come off the bench, that means that either we're using Gary against bench units, or we have Dame Simons and Gary Payton, who are all 6'2", 6'3". We saw that story last year. It didn't work very well.
KJ, you're not going to believe this, but I agree 100% with you on both things. I was 100% on the trade Simons. I feel like it is exactly like CJ and Dame, but I do kind of agree with Fuad. I think there's a little bit more upside with Ant just because of how athletically gifted he is on the defensive side. I don't expect there to be anything there, but I do think what we kind of wanted to see from Dame and CJ, I think we have a better chance of seeing that with Dame and Ant than we did with CJ. And then I agree with you. I think our biggest issue is we go out and we do get a defender like Gary Payton, but the minutes aren't
Yeah,
there
minutes
that
there.
we need it to be there. And that's the biggest issue. If we have Simons and we're paying him, the amount we're paying him, and we're playing him the amount we're playing him, then does that mean Gary Payton's the 3 and we have 3 undersized guys? Even though Gary Payton's a very good defender for his size, not very good. He's a very great defender for his size, but I'm with you. I agree 100%. I think our biggest I still am on the side of we should try to find something to trade Simons away to get more help and not kind of lock us down at the 2 and the 1 and be kind of locked there with those 3 guys all at the same time. So, we're 2 for 2 right now.
I will say they fit better together on offense. They fit a lot better than Dame and CJ did. I think that could, I guess counter some of the negative defense, but it is definitely an issue.
Dave and CJ fit fantastically together on defense, on offense.
I feel like
we had a top 5 offense in the league for like 5-10 years. Like offense was never the problem, and so I don't care as much about his catch and shoot game because like that's not really you have Damian Lillard on your team. Your offense is going to be pretty good.
yeah, okay, obviously we were a top 5 offense, so it was never an issue. But I think Simons helps more with the bench unit, whereas CJ, when he was with the bench unit, it was more ISO. Now, when Dame and CJ were playing together, it was more like taking turns, even though that was effective because of how good they were. I think in terms of like ball movement and just working as a team, I think might help a little bit and keep our offense a little bit more creative, which could help in the playoffs, rather than just ISO and driving kicks for like 90% of our offense. But like yeah, I agree with you that offense wasn't the issue, and he's just as bad as CJ on defense, maybe even worse. But there is a little bit of a positive compared to CJ, in my opinion.
I think it just comes down to his athletic ability. He has the tools and the gifts to be better defensively than he is. It just all depends on if he commits to being better. And that remains to be seen. I mean, it's been 4 years and we haven't seen it, so don't get your hopes up. My hopes aren't up, but I always hope that there's something.
Yeah, like I've heard the athleticism argument, and maybe he does have the tools. I don't know his wingspan offhand, but like was it Jabari Parker on the Bucks? Guys don't get paid to play
Yeah,
defense. Like that's what we're looking at here. And he's been in the league for 4 years. He hasn't cared about defense really at all in that time, and we just gave him $100 million. And so the idea that he's going to suddenly improve just it doesn't seem realistic to me.
I agree with you. I honestly don't see an improvement, and it kind of sucks because that's something that we definitely need. So let me ask you. Let's move on from Simons real quick. Let's talk
6'9"
about the three
wingspan for what
positions.
it's worth.
What was that?
6'9" wingspan.
Oh, okay. So let's move on to the 3 spot. This is um, a little bit more crowded here, even than the 2 spot right now. So we got Josh Hart, we got Nasir Little, and we have Gary Payton. So, in your opinion, who should be starting?
Who should start, or who do I think will start?
Let's do both. Let's do both.
So, but from what I've heard, the intent, at least right now, is to have Nas start and to have Josh Hart come off the bench and serve as more of a secondary playmaker. And so I think Little will be our starting small forward opening night, but I think that it should be Josh Hart. He's a better shooter than Nasir is. He's a better rebounder than Nasir is. And I think overall it makes more sense to have him in that spot. It would make the most sense to have him as a starting 2 and trade one of the guards. But um, uh, of the players on our roster, I would say he should start.
Fawad, do you hear this right now? This is
I,
three takes in a row. I'm agreeing with him. I've said that I would love to have Josh Hart as our 2, and that would involve having to get rid of Simons most likely. So I don't know what's going on, KJ, but we're
uh,
agreeing right now.
we've talked about
This is
Josh
going to
Hart.
be a really boring podcast.
We've talked about Josh Hart versus Nasir Little like for the starting spot extensively on our podcast, and we agree with like every single word you just said.
Yeah, I think it comes down to I think Hart ends up playing more minutes than Nas does, but I do think Little ends up
Hopefully,
starting. I hope. Yeah, I hope.
Yeah, like for me, the 3 is maybe our biggest hole in terms of roster construction, but more so than the 3 spot. I'm worried about the 5 spot. Like, do you realize that 2/3 of our front court rotation were on our G League team?
I mean, the five spot is a very scary spot right now for us. Let's talk about that real quick. We've got Nurkic, we got Eubanks. That's it.
end of list.
And
Yeah.
not a list to be excited about other than having Nurkic. Obviously health's an issue the past couple years, even though I don't feel like it's as serious as an issue as people want to make it, but it is an issue. But in your opinion, KJ, do you think we have to make a move at that 5 spot to be more legitimate than we already are?
Well, first of all, I'm not. I don't agree with the premise that we're legitimate right now. But just taking a step back, like uh, our bench is a big concern. Going back to last year, you had mentioned Mello and Cantor. Those guys were good players. They've had good careers, but defensively, particularly together, they were a disaster.
Mhm.
And so last season, out goes Mello, out goes Cantor, in comes Cody Zeller, who it looks like just signed with the Jazz. Well, welcome back, Big Handsome. and Larry Nance Jr. Those were the types of players that you needed on a team that was trying to compete. Like Cody Zeller's nothing to write home about, but he's a competent NBA five. And you need those guys if you want to make a run in the playoff. And then with Larry Nance, you had like the 4 or 5 tweener stretch five option. And so we were pretty well positioned last year in terms of the bench. But this year we have the backcourt, which is great with Gary and Josh. But other than that, I'm not sure how many NBA players are on our squad right now. And so I'm concerned about the depth. I really am, particularly at the 5 spot.
Yeah, and I wanna put this out here. I didn't mean as in like we're legitimate like title contenders or anything. I just meant to make us more legitimate than we already are. I'm of the opinion that yes, we have Jabari Walker and he looked pretty good in summer league, but that's there's so much more that we need from him than just what we saw there to be that excited like some fans are. Um, so everyone's saying that we got Jabari Walker on the bench and we got Trendon Watford. Even though how much me and Fawad love Trendon Watford, the 5 is an issue. The not having Eubanks is I don't know. To me, that's not someone you're relying on for your backup big. Maybe I'm wrong, but to me, 5 I think is a little scary as the season goes on. We're definitely playing small ball. I mean, you go I don't Eubanks is what, 6'9", I think?
Yeah, I think so.
So, we have one 7-footer in Nurkic, and that's it.
Bringing up Larry Nance was kind of a sore spot for me because he fits our roster so well. He's like pretty much exactly what we need. We traded him away for, basically as a throw-in. Maybe for like we got 1 or 2 more seconds out of it. He can play small ball 5, he can play the 4. He's a good defender, he's a really good playmaker. He does everything that we need, and we just traded him away. What he played like 30 games before getting hurt, and we didn't really give him a fair shot to get used to the system to let Chauncey was still figuring things out himself. So we didn't give him a fair shot at all. He didn't get to play with Dame too much either, a healthy Dame. So, if he was back on this roster, I think I would have so much more hope for this season. But I think right now, that big depth is pretty concerning. But I'm gonna ask you this: do you think it can be fixed by signing like someone like a Dwight Howard or a Boogie Cousins, or do you think we need to make a trade for someone more legitimate like Nerlens Noel or someone even better?
Well, something is better than nothing. And like right now, we have a 7-footer on the roster. I guess there's another guy on our training camp squad. Is it um, Greats? I forget the name
Forgot
of
his
You're
it.
name
right.
too.
Yep, you're right. I know exactly who you're talking about.
All right, and so we'll have like maybe a 2-way guy that's a 7-footer as our fourth string big. But uh, like Dwight Howard, Cous Cousins, Cody Zeller just got signed. Just a journeyman center, somebody out there who has done it before and can start a basketball game, not embarrass himself. Like that. That's the biggest hole on this roster right now, I would say.
To
So,
be fair to
someone we haven't
Eubanks, he's not gonna. I don't think he'll embarrass himself either. I think he showed he's a competent NBA player, or at least he has the potential to be. But yeah, no team should be relying on him to play big minutes.
yeah, he's rolling off
I,
at your second string center. That's a little scary. KJ, someone we haven't talked about, and probably the biggest part of our offseason was Jeremy Grant. I honestly can't remember how you reacted to it, so go ahead and let everybody know how you felt with the Jeremy Grant trade and how he fits with us.
So the Jeremy Grant trade was fantastic. Like if you look at it just as a single transaction, we traded, I think, the Bucks 2025 first and a few seconds and a few swaps to get one of the better players on the market. And so if you just look at that transaction, A plus, it's by far the best thing Joe Cronin has done. I would say the only good thing Joe Cronin has done. But if you take a step back and you think of it as just an extension of the CJ trade, um, uh, because basically what the move becomes is that you trade CJ and Larry Nance for Josh Hart and Jeremy Grant. Now, what we were going to trade CJ for was a big topic of conversation last year. If you did the post game spaces that my buddy Sheriff of PDX puts on, you probably heard us talk about Ben Simmons for hours on end. And so when we would talk about, okay, what do we trade CJ for? What do we trade CJ for? Jeremy Grant wasn't our first choice. Jeremy Grant wasn't our second choice. Jeremy Grant was, I guess. And so, yes, I think he's an improvement over Robert Covington. I think he's a great fit on the roster. That specific transaction to get him was fantastic. But do I think that the Jeremy Grant trade is the last step towards making us some type of a contender? No, I don't think so, especially because we took so many other steps back in the last year.
For what it's
That's
worth, I was in those spaces for a couple of them, and I did want Jeremy Grant like at that time, because mainly because I think CJ's contract was a lot more negative than people thought, so I thought he was like realistically in the range of what we could get. But what I didn't like was after we got him, and even before we got him, when Joe Corn was kind of hinting towards like a move in the pipeline, I got the vibe that he felt that that was like the one move that was going to push us to, like the top four seeds in the West, and that's not at all
mhm.
like what it will do. But that was the vibe I got, and I was a little bit concerned because I feel like he might be satisfied, but at least he's sounding like he's not satisfied. But I do think that it's a good move. It's just not, it's not going to save us.
Yeah, and that's something we talked about when that trade did happen is that it was a great move and a great first step, but there was more that needed to be done. So I agree. I hope that that's not his only plan, and he thinks that we're going to be much better off now. But I do agree with you, KJ. I think the trade wise, what we traded away for it, I think it was a good move. And in my opinion, I think Jeremy Grant fits great for us. He plays very good defense. He's a very good offensive player. Do you see him as being a player that we're going to try to? I guess we make that trade. We're obviously going to try to re-sign him. But what do you think? Is that a good move to re-sign him?
Well, the answer to that question is always for how much,
Yeah.
depending on exactly what type of contract he's looking for. I'm a little bit surprised he hasn't been extended yet. I think he was eligible back in August, and the fact that he doesn't is the fact that he hasn't yet is actually a pretty big red flag. But I think that it points towards just uh, the Blazers sort of sitting at a crossroads, trying to decide if they want to go all in and be a Dame team, or if they want to get younger and take a step back. And I think that just the fact that that's sitting out there is evidence of the fact that Cronin hasn't made up his mind yet.
Spot on. I've said that from I don't know how long ago it was, Fawad, but I said I just want them to commit to either one, go all in or rebuild and let's go for the future. I just want one of them. Doing this like halfway one way and then halfway the other way, it's terrible and it's not going to work. So I don't know what I drank today, but I'm on the same boat as you with a lot of things so far.
Just double checking, but I don't think Grant is actually eligible until November. But I'm still just double checking that. Could be wrong.
Let me ask you something, KJ. Me and Fawad talked about this earlier. Do you think it's going to be offensive wise? Do you think it's going to be like Dame and Grant being the two offensive focal points, or do you think it's going to be Dame and Simons, or do you have Dame and Nurk or somebody else?
I think that it should be Jeremy Grant. Like he has proven that he can go out and be a leading scorer in the league. Yes, it was on a rat team in
Hmm.
Detroit, but still, he has that skill set out there. It would give us a different look than the guard heavy stuff with Dame that we're used to. And if we're not relying on Anthony so much for the offense, then that gives us more lineup versatility with who we play at the 2 and 3. And so I think that it should be Jeremy Grant, but old habits die hard. And the Blazers have been let's watch our guards take turns team for a while. And so if I had to bet, I would say that Ant will be second in points per game this year.
Okay. I'm leaning towards I'm hoping Grant is the second option. I think that gives us more versatility offensively and defensively because then we don't have to, for one, we don't have to rely on Ant to be out there on the offensive end. So maybe Gary Payton plays more, or maybe Josh Hart plays more of the two. But I also just think it would be so nice to see something other than just two guards bringing up the ball constantly and shooting threes and trying to create for themselves. And I'm looking forward to our offense. I think our offense is going to be a lot different than what we're used to. I'm hoping it is at least. And I'm really excited to see Jeremy Grant.
Yeah, so update on his extension. He signed a 3-year contract in November 22nd of 2020, which means he's eligible 2 years later. So that would be November 22nd of this year. So in about 2 months, that's when he's eligible to sign a 4-year, 112 mil. So
I stand corrected. I had thought that eligibility was back in August. That's my bad.
because it was
Would
it
you
was
be happy? Go for it.
It was the COVID season where the off season was pushed ahead. So normally it would have been in August or July, but because of COVID, the schedule was thrown off of the normal cycle.
And what did you
Gotcha.
say he could sign for?
4 years, 112, 112.6
Would you
if you want to be.
would you be happy with that, KJ?
I mean, with the cap going where it is and Grant's offensive output, I think I know he was injured at the end of last year, but for the most part, he's been healthy, right?
So
He's been in and out, but I think a lot of that is kind of like what we saw last year with us, where we were such a bad team. They were trying to lose, so they weren't playing him as much.
Gotcha.
it's an average
Okay.
of 28 mil per year. If you didn't know.
And so, like, Jeremy Grant at between 20 and 30 million over the next 4 years. I I wouldn't love it, but I wouldn't hate it either. It's kind of like the Nurkic contract. Like it's probably a little bit of an overpay, but he's a good player, and you got to pay extra for those when you're in a small market. So
You said Fawad, you said it was 28 million a year.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I would be concerned if we didn't sign him to that extension because that would mean he either leaves or he signs for more than that, and more than that is a little bit iffy. I'm okay with paying 28. That's not bad, especially like you said with the rising cap. I think that's okay.
Yeah, that's my biggest problem is I don't ever take in account that rising cap, so it always seems like so much more than it. I mean, it is a lot, but it always seems like more.
Yeah.
Um, like I said, I'm looking forward to Jeremy Grant offensively, but honestly, I'm looking forward to his defense and seeing him help. And defense has just been such a big issue the last couple of years. I'm so excited to actually see some defense. I feel like we're going to see some defense. I hope so.
yeah, having
Um,
a guy that can go out there and be the point of attack defender on the wing that maybe Robert Covington didn't turn out to be, like that's hugely important for us, especially if you're trying to compete late into the season. We need somebody to guard Luca. We need somebody to guard LeBron. Get guys like that, and for the first time in a long time, we have a reasonable answer to that.
I'm really looking forward to the Dame, Peyton, Hart, Grant, Nurk lineup. That's going to be my favorite lineup to watch out there. It's just some crazy defense with Lillard shooting half court threes all day long.
Yeah, I feel like the
um,
defense on that lineup would be insane.
yeah. KJ, let me ask you one more question before we move on to the last thing we wanted to talk about. What is your expectation for this year, and what do you think's like a highly obtainable goal, and what you like if we overachieve, what do you think that would be?
So anytime you have a healthy Damian Lillard on your team, like you're going to be pretty good. I would say that we're guaranteed like at least a play-in spot. High end, maybe we can get as high as the fifth seed. Uh,
And if we overachieve, would you say like making like to the second round, the Western Conference, or is like even second round like out of your realm of possibilities?
I find it hard to believe that without a major trade, we could make it past one of the Clippers, Mavericks, Grizzlies, Nuggets. Hell, like, what are we going to do against Minnesota? They're so big. Yeah, so like getting out of the first round without a major injury is not likely.
Yeah, I'm there with you. Best case scenario, I think, is like a 5 seed, probably a difficult first round exit. What about your worst case? What do you think? Like things go bad, where do we end up?
How dark do you want me to go here? Because I could go all the way dark.
Let's say
Bring it.
no injuries, as dark as it gets.
Worst worst possible scenario would be we're coming up on the trade deadline. The Blazers are 5 games below 500. Dame's looking around and it's not really working. Chauncey has lost the team. And then we're talking about, and I know this is verboten in the Blazers discourse, but at that point, I could see a trade request coming. Like, I know what he said. I've heard what he said about loyalty, but loyalty goes 2 ways. And I don't think that if you look at everything the Portland Trailblazers have done in the last 2 years, that they've really committed to building a championship contender around him. And so he's got the contract extension now. If it becomes clear that this team just isn't going to be competitive with him on it, then I could see Dame winding up somewhere else. That's the worst case scenario.
I think that's fair.
I thought of something that we haven't really talked about too much. How do you feel about Chauncey as a coach?
So the jury is still out on Billups if he is a good coach, but I think that the jury is back in that he's not a great coach. Like at this point, we're hoping for average at best. One of the things that a good coach does, and Stotts was good at this. I was a big Terry Stotts guy, and so that kind of colors my opinion on Billups. But one of the things that good coach does is he tailors his strategy to his personnel. You've seen Pop do this over the years, changing from being a traditional back to the basket team with the Twin Towers to more pace and space with Manu and Tim, Manu and Tony, I should say. And so the blitzing thing that Chauncey is going on didn't work very well last year. Like people want to write off last season and say, "Oh, it was a tanking year, and so we don't have to worry about any of that." But even prior to the tank, if you look at our defensive efficiency in November and December, I think we were 27th in the league. The Blazers blitzed the pick and roll more than any other team in the league, and the Blazers gave up more points per possession on a blitz than any other team in the league. And so I don't know if his defensive scheme really makes sense in on an NBA level, and it definitely doesn't make sense with the personnel. If you're going to give Yusuf Nurkic $70 million to be your center, you have to play drop defense because that's what Yusuf Nurkic could do. Trying to turn him into a blitzing guy like he's Bam Adebayo, that's I don't think that that's going to be successful, and I think that that's probably why he lost some of the bets last year.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of the blitzing either. I don't know why you take your pretty much your only rim defender and you're putting them blitzing out on the 3-point line. It didn't make sense to me, and it didn't work. So I think if we were to do it now this year with the better defenders we have now, it would probably work a little bit better. But I still am not a fan of it. I don't like that idea.
Yeah, I just that Nurk's just going to be your linchpin defensively,
Yep.
and like he's not a blitz trap switch guy. He's like a massive dude that you put in front of the rim and have him push everybody else away. And so I hope that I'm wrong about this. Maybe Chauncey, with a healthy Dame, comes up with a strategy that works really great for the rest of the team. Maybe Chris Burkhardt is right, and Robert Covington was just that terrible. And so now that he's off the team, that's going to cure our woes. I don't know. But like just schematically, what we've seen from him so far hasn't made sense for our roster, and that's not the sign of a good coach to me.
First of all,
Fawad, I want you to answer this, Fawad, but I just want to shout out Chris Burke real quick. Chris Burkhart. I said Chris Burke. I just want to shout him out. He has a new job with Rip City Radio. I just want to say congratulations. I think it's awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say, and it sounds like he's going to get to do some player interviews coming up pretty soon. So that's exciting stuff. So shout out to the Trailcasters, Keith and Chris. Love you guys.
Chris is a great guy. I'm really excited for his Rip City Radio stuff, and both of them, both the Trailcasters, we're pretty close friends with them, I guess. But anyways, back to Chauncey Billups. Yeah, first of all, I was gonna say I was a big stats guy too, so I was really happy that you said that. I always appreciated that I feel like he's one of the better coaches in the league in terms of like adapting his coaching style to maximize like the skill set of his players, and I always appreciated him for that. And I agree that Chauncey hasn't done that so far, but I think that the jury is still out completely because he had like what 25, maybe 30 games with a healthy roster, and even that healthy roster didn't include a healthy Dame. So I think that that's not enough time. A lot of first year coaches have they need like half season sometimes to really work things out. Like the Celtics were under 500 all the way in
I was just
January.
gonna say that. Yeah.
And even the Mavs, I think they had a similar record, maybe one game up or down, and also in January, maybe late December, and they turned it around, and they were one of the better teams in the league in the second half of the season. So I think Chauncey didn't get that full that full period to work things out and try a bunch of things and see what works and what doesn't. But hopefully, that was enough to see that the blitzing didn't work, and then maybe we can pick up from there, and then go on with the rest of the season. Maybe he's still a great coach. Maybe he's a terrible coach. I think I can't say anything at all right now because just haven't seen enough, in my opinion.
It's funny that you mentioned the Celtics. I mentioned that I like the Blazers podcast last year, and Ryan and I were talking about the comparison between Chauncey Billups and Ime Udoka, and uh, them both being former players, them both having sort of that terse style of calling out their team. And at the time, we're just like, yeah, maybe this doesn't work because people forget like Ime Udoka was on the hot seat in December. Like things were not going well with the Celtics, and so maybe that comparison proves apt, and he ends up being a really good coach when he has a healthy roster. But I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, I'm holding out until this year to really get a true opinion on him. Like Fuad said, even when we were healthy, we weren't really healthy with Dame having issues. So I'm willing to give him at least another year to see what we can do. Um, One last thing before we let Fawad finish us up here. We haven't talked at all about him. How did you feel with the Shaden Sharp draft pick? How did you feel about that?
I think that's another example of the Blazers front office not committing to
Yep.
Damian Lillard's prime.
Yep.
Maybe Shaden Sharp was the best player in the draft. Maybe he is amazing. Maybe he is the Canadian Kobe. Like I'll allow that to be possible. But he's 19 years old, and so what if he played 0 minutes in college? And so whatever he is, he's not going to be it until Damian Lillard's 35, 36 years old. And so the idea that those two guys will play together on a competitive team is just silly. If the Blazers were serious about building around Damian Lillard, they would have traded that pick. And I was really disappointed that they didn't.
I think we all kind of agree on that one.
Just a little add on to that. What I find really interesting is the reaction to Joe Cronin and I guess our overall offseason. I feel like all of his moves were pretty much very similar to what Neil O'Shea would have done. And the reaction to this offseason from our fan base has been largely positive. Even around the league has been largely positive, but I can guarantee if it was Neil O'Shea, I feel like the exact same moves would have been received much worse. But it's I guess it's a conversation for a different day.
Okay, Fawad, you had ESPN came out with what was it, 26 through 100, I believe,
Yeah, they saved their
rankings of
top
some
25
players.
for later.
So we're gonna go over it really quickly because there's a couple Blazers in there that we feel are a little low on the list here. So go for it.
So actually, first I'm gonna preface this that I think these lists are kind of they're meant to generate discussion and like anger. So I think we're kind of taking the bait, but whatever. It's still the off season, nothing better to discuss. So
True.
in terms of Blazers, we have Ant at 91st, Nurkic at 88th, and Grant at 64th. And Dame obviously wasn't ranked, so he's somewhere in the top 25. We don't know where. So are any of these surprising to you or particularly noteworthy, KJ?
And so it's really hard with stuff like this because, like, you always hear the phrase top 10 player, top 20 player. But then when you actually count them, you're just like, wait, this gets kind of tricky. And so, do I have a strong opinion on Grant Williams at 99 versus Mitchell Robinson at 98? Um, uh, like, not really. Like, it's tricky ranking guys like this, particularly when you're talking across positions. And so, on the one hand, 91 seems low for Anthony, but on the other hand, I think that the sense around the league is that yeah, he was putting up numbers last year, but he was doing it on a team trying to lose, and so uh, that that's sort of being discounted. I wouldn't have been surprised if he was left off the list entirely. So the fact that he was up to 90 is actually surprisingly high to me. It's nice to see other Blazers on the list. I haven't seen a breakdown by team of how many other teams have 4 players in the top 100, though Dirk is pretty far down there. One thing I did think that was noteworthy is that Jeremy Grant is sitting at, I think, 56. And last year,
64.
CJ was 64. Thank you. And then last year, CJ was sitting at 30. And so just going back to that transaction, if you want to consider the McCollum, the New Orleans Detroit trade as like sort of a 3-team deal, like that, just in pure talent, that's a pretty big step downward.
Curious to see where CJ is right now, and he is 45th.
I'm sorry?
It's 45th right now, like this year.
45th. Okay.
I agreed with a lot of what you said with Simons. I wouldn't have been surprised if he wasn't on the list either. I think there's still a lot of question marks with him. Nurk, I think should have been higher, but I guess it's just health. But like honestly, any top 100 list is gonna have like weird things. No one can agree on any top 100 list, so it's not really surprising to see something like that. Like I think Ant 91 is fine. I have no issues with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to add much to it because I'm not a big fan of these top 100 players. I'm not a big fan when the NFL does it, and I'm not a big fan of when the NBA does it. But I do see there was one thing I saw that I wasn't, and maybe I'm just being biased because I like Nurk better, but I believe Porzingis was ahead of Nurk.
Where?
By one spot, I believe, yeah.
Oh, is it only one?
Spots.
Is it 88 and 89?
Oh, 88 and 80. Okay, that's not that bad then. Never mind. I take it back. I would much rather have Nurk than Porzingis, but um, that's not that big of a difference there. So truly, I don't buy too much stock into this, and I'm sure probably a lot of the NBA players could care less as well. They're holding on for Nurk. The reason why he dropped so much is because they're saying he was shut down with that foot injury after 56 games, which I think we all know he didn't necessarily have a real foot injury.
Yeah,
So
that's one of those foot injury things.
yeah,
But like it plays into the narrative with Nurkic. I think over the last 5 years, he's averaged 51 games a season.
yep.
And yes, he got shut down last season because we were tanking. And yes, there have been some COVID shortened seasons in that span. And yes, that includes a season where he missed almost the whole year because he broke his leg. But caveats or no, like he's still a guy that misses a lot of games, which is what has me so nervous about a bench.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. Fawad, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Um, sure. I guess one minor note. Gary Trent Jr. was not on this list at all, and I just said so much about how these lists are meaningless, but that's blasphemous to me.
He's not, huh? Unless he's in the top 25.
Hopefully, he better be.
and Paulo Banchero is on here already at 82. I mean, come on, dude, you haven't done anything yet.
That was the one issue I had with this list is there was a bunch of rookies on here, and it's like they may be better players, projected wise, but until they're in the NBA, we have no idea.
And Julius Randle is somehow above Michael Porter Jr. and John Collins. But yeah, we could do this all day.
KJ, do you have anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
No, I think we touched bases on pretty much everything you and I did discussed. I do want to say congratulations to Chris on the new gig. I'm excited for him there. All joking aside, he and I are friends, and I appreciate you guys for letting me on.
We appreciate you making time to come join us. I know like I said, I know it was short notice, but I'm glad you made it here, and we look forward to doing more with you on here. Fawad, do you have anything?
Yeah, the countdown for training camp is.
Oh yes.
We're
Yes.
recording on Tuesday, so take out a day when you listen to this. Right now it's 7 days until training camp and 13 until our first preseason game. So under 2 weeks.
We're getting there.
Let's go, Rip City, baby.
And very soon, I believe, KJ, correct me if I'm wrong, we're gonna start having these Twitter Spaces again, right? I know they kind of went on the back burner once off season started.
And so doing the post game space after every game became kind of a lot. And so I think that Seth, my buddy Sheriff of PDX, is planning on doing some spaces during the season, but at a more limited schedule. If you guys are out there and you participated in the spaces, or if you just want to talk to other Blazer fans after a game, reach out to us, let us know, and we'll see what type of appetite there is there.
Yeah, no, I definitely thought I was surprised at how often there was Twitter Spaces. I was like, man, that's a lot of work. So I don't blame you guys for cutting back on it at all.
Yeah, I
But
know that he has season tickets, and so maybe we would just do road games so he doesn't have to worry about the travel. But
yeah.
I don't know. That's still up in the air. If you guys missed the spaces, let us know, and I'll see if I can talk him into doing more.
Yeah, and honestly, you guys, if you are on Twitter and you haven't been a part of them, they're very fun. You get to hear, everyone's reactions right away, and it's a good time. And every time I've been in them, I've enjoyed it. And sometimes you get your mind open up to something you didn't even think about. So it's very informational, and it's a good time to talk with everybody.
And they're surprisingly civil too. Like
Right?
you would think that a bunch of strangers on Twitter talking to each other about basketball would devolve into a bunch of yelling, but Seth runs a tight ship. Like those conversations have been great, and occasionally we'll get guests in there. Like we had Chris Haynes talking to us when the Neil O'Shea news broke, and so that was pretty cool. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do more of those this year.
I hope so. KJ, once again, thank you for joining. We really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to watching basketball and talking with you about it as the season goes on. And Fawad, thanks for coming tonight as always. And everybody that's listening, thank you for listening. And as always, Rip City, baby. Thanks to My Life Pursuing for the music used on the intros and the outros of this podcast. You can check them out on all major streaming platforms at My Life Pursuing.